Well, I'm here with Clark Aldrich today, and he's got a new book coming out, huh? What's the name of it?
The book is called The Complete Guide to Simulations in Serious Games.
And what I heard, this is like an encyclopedia or a glossary or what?
Yeah, it's a large style guide. A lot of different people, when talking about simulations in serious games, aren't really aware of how many best practices there are and how many different ways of doing things that have already been designed. A lot of people who are doing serious games and simulations are starting from scratch, and so this is a collection of all the different ways that people have been doing various things, everything from designing interfaces to creating level design to creating some of the systems that people engage with, whether it's a board game or whether it's something complex and mathematical or whether it's units on a map or other things like that.
Well, thank you for sending me the introduction and the first chapter. I noticed that Jeff Sandiford of Acton Foundation, who has the Acton MBA school, provided the introduction. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what Acton is doing and how they're using games. We're looking at the basic page that they currently have on the website at actonsims.com. And just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you think about what they're doing. Let's start from an open-ended question here with what are they trying to do and what do you think of it?
Sure. What Jeff Jennifer is trying to do with Acton is to rethink the whole education model, and I think he's doing an extraordinarily interesting and good job, and I'm certainly hoping that a lot of other universities start looking at what he's doing. At a very high level, I think he is focusing on all three different types of how to learn, and one of them is learning to know, which I think a lot of other business schools have done a fairly good job at. But he's also focusing on learning to be, and that is what is the mission of the entrepreneur? How do you literally create a hero's journey out of being an entrepreneur, and how do you have a life that's not just focused on, to say, being successful in a business sense, but being successful as a person, and how do you become the best person, the most fulfilled person you can be. And so Jeff is very focused on the learning to be as well. And then there's a third part after learning to know and learning to be is learning to do. And one of the premises that I think we certainly agree on is that if you want to focus on teaching someone how to do something, it's a very different methodology than if you're teaching someone how to know something. If I want to teach you how to know something, I'll put up a lot of slides, a lot of charts, I'll give you some books to read, I might give you a funny story or whatever, and you might in turn use things like Google or whatever to present a lot of information. The whole process of learning to do is very different. It has to be done in a much more interactive, engaging environment. There has to be a lot of trial and failure. There has to be a slow ramping up or an increased complexity of the environment in which you're working. And so typically computer games have to some degree modeled that pretty well. And I think where Jeff Sandifer has gone with Acton is sort of the next step beyond that, where he was not interested in making computer games per se. He was interested in making very educational experiences that had some of the affordances and attributes of computer games, but around very hard, rigorous content, and then again presented in a very engaging way. The nice thing about the Acton Business School model is that the people at Acton, including Jeff Sandifer, were able to teach classes for quite a number of years in entrepreneurship, and then start realizing what stuff did people have problems with. What were the stuff that students didn't get from the traditional literature and the traditional media, and so those were the areas in which he decided to use this kind of serious game or educational simulation approach. And I think that's a really good model. You don't want to use these types of activities for things where other content is doing a great job. But when you can identify problems in your curricula, whether or not you're a corporation or whether or not you're a business school or whatever, when you're identifying areas that people are having a great deal of trouble, especially in the learning to do area, these things make sense. One more quick comment is that if you do look at this website, this is accessible to anyone. The Acton Business School did not put up big gates around this. You don't have to be a student in order to do it, even though there's terrific value in, again, having a trained instructor and or having a good community to do these with. But anyone can take a look at these. Anyone can jump in and try it. And if you are interested in any kind of educational simulation or serious games, then I would think these are a really great place to start.
Great. Great. Well, why don't we go into one of the games, Robo Rush? And I don't know if you know any background on that that you can provide.
Sure. In the game Robo Rush, Acton Business School was working hard to give people a feel for one part of the entrepreneurial journey. And so the game has three very distinct phases, and we'll go through each of those phases, I believe, right here. And it starts off. One of the ideas that Acton had was to make these things sort of cartoony and very engaging in that regard. And one of the nice things is that even though the surface level content, the skin, if you will, around the simulations are very cartoony and very accessible, the algorithms, the mathematics, the subject matter expertise underneath them is absolutely, very, very deep, as deep as any, business school in the world, as you'd expect from a top business school. So it's a really nice thing in that, again, it's a very accessible program on the outside, but very, very deep and rigorous on the inside. So right now what you're seeing is, again, the first part of the entrepreneurial process. And this is sort of this is a little mini game where you're trying to match the product there, which is a microcosm for some of the kinds of hand building that you might have to do when you're starting off on the entrepreneurial process. And what you're doing is you're going door to door and engaging customers. And one of the nice things about engaging the customer is there's two sides of it. And one side is, what does the customer want? And the other side of it is, what is it that you have that's available that's actually profitable for you to do? So it's one thing to say, here, customer, here's exactly what you want. Another thing to say, will you take something that is almost what you want, that is literally better for me as the seller to sell you? And that kind of conversation, that kind of tension, I think is a very realistic part of any kind of journey. You're not just there to give the customer exactly what they want at the price they exactly want. In some cases, there is a bit of a negotiation that goes with it. So this first part has you traveling in your van door to door, basically, and sort of making individual sales.
Right. Now, I heard that in the actual MBA program at Acton, they actually require their MBA students to actually do that, go door to door and sell.
Yeah, there's a lot of microcosms involved. And by the way, I'll be the first to admit it, as much as I love simulations, microcosms are better. And so if you do want to teach someone how to sell, then what they do is they have people go door to door and sell books and encyclopedias or whatever. And, it's hard and it's full of rejection, but you do it and you work your way through it and you sort of, get tough through the process and you sort of learn what works and what doesn't work. So it is nice that you're right. These types of simulations are used with the kinds of microcosm-based training as well.